This video will cover an alternate acreage split option that allows you to invoice and split multiple items on an invoice to different groups of cost centers. To begin, we'll look at our current method for doing the acreage split. Now, this acreage split option is available on your invoice entry, direct expense check, deposit, or miscellaneous check entry. For today, we'll just use our invoice entry screen. So I'll go ahead and do my invoice. You should be familiar with the invoice or check entry, so I'm not going through all of the deals, information on all the entry items here. So let's say we purchased some chemicals, and that was $8,000. Now currently, when you do your acreage split, you assign your cost centers for that split. That applies to the full amount of the invoice. So in this case, I have an $8,000 invoice, and I add my cost centers, and it'll split that $8,000 amongst the cost centers, using the acreage to divide the expense by percentage of acreage. So before I finish here, I have to do my GL and my job. Let's see what we've got here. I'll go ahead and do some pest control. And if this is a split that I'm going to use on an ongoing basis, I can mark memorize this split. When it does the memorize, it uses the description on the top part of the invoice as the identifier or the name for that split. So if you want to use an alternate description before you memorize a split, you can change that before doing your acreage split, and then always change it back afterwards. So you can see the results of our split here. Each of those cost centers received their percentage of the $8,000. But what we've had a lot of customers ask about is when we have an invoice, maybe for like chemicals or fertilizer, where different parts of the invoice may be allocated amongst different cost centers. In the past, we would just advise customers to use a sub number, do multiple invoice numbers. But a while back, we actually did a new feature, new option that not too many of our customers know about, to be able to split an invoice up amongst different groups. So let's take a look at how we turn that on. If you're interested in turning this on, what you would do is go to your Tools menu and then Program Setup. Go to your Farm tab, and then Control Numbers. And what you do is you change this option down at the bottom, Cost Accounting Acreage Split, from number 1 to number 2. Go ahead and hit OK, and then use the options on the Tools menu to change to another company and reopen your program. Now let's go ahead and look at our invoice and see the changes that have been made. So I'll come back into my invoice entry, and I'll go ahead and put in my CPS, my California Production Services vendor again, enter in my invoice number, get my invoice date, and now maybe I'm going to go ahead and just do a account number or whatever other description I want for my check printing, and then my invoice total. Now when I click on the acreage split button, I'm going to have a split screen. So now I can select my job, my GL number, and then if I want a description on that line, I can go ahead and put a description on there. And now this is where we get to split the amounts. Now I'm going to say this part of the invoice is for $6,000. I click on that line, and then I come down to my bottom half of the screen and now select the cost centers that I want the $6,000 to be split amongst. And then I can come back and enter in my second split and the amount that will be applied to the second split. So maybe for the seeds, we had that going to our home branch cost centers. So my first line, my roundup, my 6,000 is split between my CT1 and 1B. My second line at the top is split between my home ranch cost centers. And if you have more than two, you can do that. You can add as many items as you need to split your entire invoice. Once I hit OK, then it'll take those two different amounts and set up and do our allocations. Now, as a side note, if you've used the Memorize option, you right-click on the Acreage Split button to get to those acreage splits that you've memorized. At any point, if you want to edit those, you can go to your cost accounting menu, Setup, and then Memorized Acreage Splits. Simply click on the lookup and select your split, and you can change your GL job or the cost centers that are assigned to that split. If you did change your screen to the new Acreage Split option and you want to change it back, you can always go back to your program setup and change the Acreage Split from 2 back to 1. If you have any comments, suggestions, or questions on using the Acreage Split, please contact our support department at support@datatechag.com.